Hi, everybody. I am Marcie Vaiphei, and I teach at the Hub Center in St. Paul. I've been working in ABE this is my 18th year.
My name is Katy Chiqui. I've been working adult ed for 10 plus years, and I am at Minneapolis Adult Education.
Welcome.
So we are going to start off with a notice and wonder. We are going to ask that you use your chat box a lot today. So we have 3 questions we're going to ask you, and I want you to type each of those answers that you come up with into your chat box, please. My first question is, what do you notice? My second question is, what do you wonder? And finally, what math do you see? So again, as you're looking, make sure you're typing your answers into the chat box. All right, so some of the things that I see in the chat box are grid lines. I'm seeing organization, a garden, planting. Somebody said coordinate grid. Soil seeds, seed packets, gardening tools. A guy bending over and gardening. Person planting seeds. All right, so you guys have come up with some great answers here.
I'm laughing because it looks like we all came out of Dan's session on why organization things help us. Everybody's thinking grids today. Good.
Arrays of seeds. All right. Well, thank you everybody for starting out and engaging in this notice and wonder. We are really wanting to highlight that math is everywhere, and that, as Dan mentioned, it can empower us and our students in our everyday lives. And we want to empower our students with math rather than punish them.
Today, I just want to focus on what we're going to be doing in this session. So there are 2 main bullet points. The first thing we're going to do is experience depth and rigor within AB standards. So we are doing the lower 2 levels of the CCRS. And specifically, we're going to be focusing on these 2 standards, 3OA3, operations in algebra, where we use multiplication and division within 100 to solve word problems in situations involving equal groups, arrays, and measurement quantities. For example, by using drawings and equations with a symbol for the unknown number to represent the problem. Our second standard we're going to be looking at is 3OA4, which is where we determine the unknown whole number in a multiplication or division equation relating to 3 whole numbers. For example, determine the unknown number that makes the equation true in each of the equations. 8 times, I don't know, equals 48. 5 equals, I don't know, divided by 3, and 6 times 6 equals, I don't know. So those are the 2 standards we're going to be focusing on our presentation today, and then we're going to give you a chance to focus on another one, but all within the AB standards. And then the second objective we want to talk about is utilizing guidelines and resources to plan a rich task that allows your students to experience the depth and rigor within this lower level. Some key vocabulary we might mention today that you're going to hear. We want to just make sure that you have those definitions handy. We will be using the word decontextualized math, and what that means is that it's been isolated from its context or real life application. The second word you might hear us use is contextualized math, which is the opposite. It's where math is embedded in context or real world. And then another mathy term you might hear us use is low floor, high ceiling. And what those problems are is where everyone can enter. It's a low floor. Everyone can participate. They can walk into that problem no matter their mathematical skill, but it allows a high ceiling, or it allows the individual to go to their level of challenge. So there's no boundary keeping everybody within that. They have the freedom to everybody enter and go wherever their highest skill allows them.
All right, so our first thing that we're going to start with is an activity with you guys. Okay, what I want you to do is to take a minute and pull out a piece of paper and a writing utensil. So if you don't have one handy, please pull out a piece of paper and a writing utensil. Hopefully that was enough time for you. We want you to do the following problems, and you'll have about a minute to complete them. Okay, if you don't complete them, that's fine, but we want you to get as far as you can. Okay, and we're practicing multiplication skills here. Your minute starts now. All right, about 20 seconds left.
That would be time.
All right. Next, we're going to do a mini reflection. So again, we want you to type your answers into the chat box, please. I'm going to give you a list of questions that we want you to consider, and then we're going to give you some time and space to do some reflecting. So we want you to ask yourselves, what math skills did you just use? What successes or challenges do you experience when you did that activity? What did you learn from this task? And was there evidence of you using any mathematical practices, such as making sense of problems and persevere in solving them, reasoning abstractly and quantitatively, modeling with mathematics, or looking for and making use of structure? We're going to give you about 2 minutes to do some reflecting.
Go ahead and put all your thoughts there in the chat box. Lots of good thoughts coming in there. I can see many people talking about using skills you've already memorized in your multiplication. Some of you said it was boring, or you didn't learn anything really. Drills and those things came back to your memory of being in school maybe. There was really no need to persevere. Basic skills were there. A lot of memorization I see coming through. The time thing kind of stressed you out a little bit, or made you not want to write down the problems, just the answers. There was some symbol recognition that you had to be aware of. Good. You might have had a memory lapse. There was definitely some structure.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so what that was an example of is a decontextualized sort of problem. And we've all been really familiar with those in our math experiences growing up, where we were given problems and asked to solve them. Now we're going to try another type of problem that I want you to look at. This is called the cookie problem. This is a contextualized example. And so we're going to look through here. You can use a piece of paper, also the same one you were working on, maybe if you want to turn it on the back side. So I'm going to read the question here. And once you find an answer, or you think you have an answer, then I want you to challenge yourself and think, is there another option? Are there other possible solutions? So the question is, Daniel was making chocolate cookies. He had cookies in each row and many rows. There were a total of 84 cookies. You may use the digits 0 through 9 in any one of the blank boxes or the blank dashes there. The answer of 84 does not eliminate using the 8 or the 4.
So our final question then for you is, how many cookies were there in each row? And how many rows of cookies were there? You can draw a model to support your answer if you find that helpful. So the next thing that we're going to have you do is, we have created Jamboards to help facilitate group collaboration. Oops. I went too fast, you guys. Marcie, how many minutes do they get to work on this individually?
6, 4 actually with the by themselves, but that's okay. They probably have some ideas started. We really don't want you just to have 2 numbers in your head. We're really hoping that you've challenged yourself to come up with some other solutions and think about that model. All right, so what we're going to do next is that we're going to put you in some breakout rooms, and you're going to be working with other people. And in these breakout rooms, you're going to be given, well, you're going to get the Jamboards before you leave, but you're going to be working on a Jamboard there. And what we would like you to do is to discuss the solutions you came up with, discuss what steps you took to solve the problem, where you began, and then what you did after that and where it went. And then we are hoping to see some of your models that support your thinking, support your solutions that you came up with. You may use the sticky notes, you could use the pen, you can use a text box, any way that you can illustrate your answers that you came up with. So once you're in your group, pick someone to be your group's reporter, because once you are finished, we'll come back as a whole group to reflect, and we'd like one of your reporter to share out what you discussed. On the next slide here, we're going to take a look at what the Jamboard looks like. So you will get 2 pages in your Jamboard. The first page will have the word problem and the directions on it. You'll see that orange sticky there in the middle of it that tells the group number. That group number corresponds to your breakout room number. So if you are in breakout room 8, you're going to be looking for the orange sticky that says breakout room 8. The next thing you need to know is that Mark is going to be dropping the links to the Jamboards in the chat box, and you will notice that there are several Jamboards. If you are in breakout room 8, then you are going to click on Cookie Problem Solutions Jam 2, because that is for use for breakout rooms 6 through 10. Does anyone have any questions about what you need to do here? Page 2 of your Jamboard is where you will draw your models and give your solutions. Page 1 is just your reference sheet. All right, we're going to put you in breakout rooms. 4 people is not going to work really nice, Gail. So since there's 25 people.
Are you okay with some of the groups of 3, or would you rather have as many groups of 4 as possible and then maybe just one with less? Or I
could do groups of 3, but one group will just have an extra person.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I'm going to open the rooms, and you have 9 minutes plus a 2-minute countdown. So just go ahead and stay in your room even when you see that countdown, because it'll automatically bring you back. And then if you need any help, just go ahead and there'll be something that you could press, and then one of us from the main room will come in and help you. Okay, I'm opening the rooms now. All right, looks like everyone's in. We're starting to join for the most part. Cindy, I don't see that you're joining. Do you see the button to accept? Oh.
All right, so I'm hoping that you finished up putting your remaining little drawings on there, your models. We're going to ask you the same kinds of reflection questions that we asked you with the decontextualized problems. Go ahead and type your answers for this problem in the chat box. So this time, doing the cookie problem, what math skills did you use? What successes or challenges did you experience? What did you learn from this task? Was there evidence of you making sense of problems and persevere in solving them, reasoning abstractly and quantitatively, modeling with mathematics, or looking for and making use of structure. And I'll give you a few minutes to put some of your thoughts there in the chat box.
Martha, I'm going to ask for more details.
We're going to come back to that statement there, Martha, in a minute. All right, so a lot of skills I saw again was that you're using multiplication or division. Yes, you did use your background knowledges. Some of the successes I saw that where you were working together or you could draw it out. You were using structure. Definitely math practice 7. I saw math practice 4. Several of you were showing the modeling and drawing your little cookie sheets. I saw one of you, one of the groups, you chose to change your background in your Jamboard and make it the coordinate grid, and you were using those little boxes to help you create your cookie sheet there, so to make your arrays. I did see a table. So there are definitely structures you're aware of or models that you could use kind of fluently throughout. Very good. Learning, of course, we all know, most of us here all know our multiplication facts. So there wasn't maybe a huge learning curve as far as the math skills here, but you did get to work collaboratively, and that helped to like generate ideas. It was much more interesting, you said. So that's going to lead us to the next slide here.
One more thing I wanted to point out. This, if you also notice, this activity allowed for groups, once they were able to find a solution that they were satisfied with, to ask deeper questions. And Ben's group asked the question, how do we get an equal number in each row? And so this is an example of like how you can take a problem, and if a group is ready, you can challenge them, or they can explore other areas that have naturally like questions that have arisen from the problem, and allow another pathway for them to go even deeper.
And one group did mention that. You said we started with 2. You divided by 2 right away, and you kept it even the whole way through there. Like Mark's going to throw in that he multiplied problems that he didn't have memorized. So the first activity you had them all memorized. This one, 84, wasn't necessarily a product that you had all the factors memorized for. You had to kind of go back in and figure that out. Good. I also want to, well, we'll talk about that here. In comparing and contrasting, what we'd like to do is just think about the 2 activities we just experienced. One activity was a decontextualized worksheet of problems, mathematical problems you're familiar with or you had memorized, and then a contextualized problem where we're actually working with baking, things that people are more familiar with making cookies, and allowing yourselves to kind of create the multiplication problems to get to that 84. So go ahead, Katie. Some reflection questions we're going to ask you about this one. What did you learn from each task? What was comparing and contrasting? What was different between the decontextualized versus the contextualized? What skills did each task require? And thinking about Dan's keynote this morning, did either of these activities generate a feeling of punishment or empowerment? And why would you think so? Or what would make you lean towards one of those? And if you were your student in the classroom, what would you walk away with after utilizing these problems or completing these problems within your class?
Sorry, guys, pushed the wrong button. So again, as you're thinking through these reflections and you're comparing and contrasting, jot down some of those ideas in the chat box and share them out, please.
Joan, can you clarify for me? What steps did you use? Are you talking about as a student to solve or as a teacher planning this? Thank you, Joan.
So it sounds like, Joan, you as a student, you were noticing patterns and describing them with your group, but then you were wanting to get to that generalization of if I had a problem like this again, what can I use? What tools can I use to solve this problem? That's something. It's like my it's what we do in my class. I'm loving all these.
There's that pressure. I was wondering what the people who are really good at math are doing to solve this problem. Am I doing it right? Is that perfectionism that he talked about this morning? So lots of thoughts here about this being more interesting with the cookie than just the decontextualized number problems. You liked it visually. You liked that you could collaborate. You liked that there was more than one result. The cookies did feel more accessible. Yeah, I'm glad that actually Martha's saying the first task felt like busy work, not quite punishment, but not worthwhile. While the second task was rich, the first was not. So she preferred the richer one, but I think there's something to be noted here about when we should use decontextualized problems and when we should be using contextualized. I think over the years, we've only been taught more heavily in the decontextualized side, which leaves students thinking like, is this just busy work? Do I have to be fast to complete this? Have I memorized all that I need? It's that perfectionism kind of mentality that somehow we're missing the boat. It's kind of building that anxiety, where there is a good point to having decontextualized problems, as I think someone said, like, they remember them from their childhood and they were good at them, so they liked those. But there is an importance of developing fluency once the concept has been established. But contextualize kind of helps you to put that into context and give the conceptual behind it. One more comment here. Using cookies made me choose a realistic model for my array. I wouldn't put 2 rows of 42 cookies on my, so this is the next question we wanted to get to is, again, that low floor, high ceiling thought of a task. Like, could you all enter at any kind of math skill you had if you're looking at cookies? Anybody can just jump right in and start drawing their pictures. They can start thinking about how they would make 84. But then this high ceiling idea where we could take this and keep going with it. We could ask questions like, were your factors reasonable? Can you have a cookie sheet with 1 row and 84 cookies? Was that reasonable? And then also putting in another factor, like, what if we had 3 numbers? What if there was a pan? What if we had to think about how many pans we would use, not just rows and columns of cookies, but what if there was a pan? How many pans would we use? More than 1. So being able to use a task that allows everybody to enter and to participate, but then also making it available that it can continue on, or that high ceiling. Maybe you want to bring in variables or set up equations, or tying in those symbols with it. I liked the grid that some of you brought in.
Yeah, some of you guys are mentioning being able to have real life problems is a really important aspect to be able to connect with students and to leverage some of their prior knowledge. Laura mentioned the fact of, you have women in class who do all the cooking. And so that's, where a lot of their prior knowledge falls. And so being able to leverage that. I also know that, the more that we can use some of that to connect, and that Dan talked about, that getting them interested, like, what is it that's going to get your students interested in a task and excited about it, versus if you put up those timetables. For some of us, as people mentioned, that's a great childhood memory. They were good at it, they excelled at it. So yeah, let's do some more of that. Others, felt anxiety, right? Oh my gosh, time tests again. Oh, and it brought us back to that like negative space around math. And so it's really important to examine the tasks that we do. And as Marcie mentioned, the first task, there wasn't anything wrong with it, but we want to make sure we're using it for the correct reasons. We are developing fluency for students. We're giving them that extra practice once they've started to develop those skills. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is that the first task, multiplication facts, really focused on just hitting one of the standards and about multiplication facts, versus the cookie activity did hit both standards because it allowed us to solve mathematical equations with unknown factors. And with the first one, you just were solving for the solution. You were never given a chance to fill in the blank for a factor for the product. And so that tasks, the richer a task is, the more powerful it can be, and supporting standards in a rich manner. Marcie, are you ready to move on?
Yep.
All right.
Mark says the cookie problem also introduces a headache with factoring as a potential aspirin. Bouncing off of Dan's thing there. Go ahead, Katie, and go to the next slide. So
yeah.
We are going to take a break here in a minute, but before we do that, just thinking about those questions from what we just did. So it feels kind of fast. We just did 2 tasks, focusing on a level 3 math skill, operations and algebraic thinking with multiplication. And we're just wondering, what are you still wondering? What general questions do you have? Or do you still have some questions about that vocabulary?
I see in the chat, Martha had actually put a wondering prior to even posting this slide. Martha, can you think of another example that you could use around cooking, where you could slightly alter the cooking task instead of it being cookies, but provide the same kind of openness and richness in the problem? For those of you that didn't see in the chat box, she posted about the fact that a lot of times people in Latin American countries do not use their ovens to bake, they use them to store. And I can attest to that. My mother-in-law does that still here in the United States. I've melted one of her pans before.
Hi, this is Martha. I don't have one right off the top of my head, but I just think, once you get to know your students and what kind of cooking that they do, there's still lots of math problems involved in that they're doing, and they just don't call it math.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a really good point. Naming things that they're already doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, how do you decide how many tamales to put in the steamer? Like, how do you know? How do you know how many are going to fit? Balanced with the amount of time it's going to take, or, Thank you.
Yes, definitely knowing your students, and like, it doesn't have to be about cooking, but I do the same thing with estimation in cooking. Like, most people who, when they make rice, are not like Americans who do 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water. They have a good estimation, like how many handfuls they're going to use per person eating, and then like a general level of how much water they're adding to it, using their body parts as measuring tools. So there is a knowledge of, or an experience of knowledge with your students that helps you develop some of those thoughts. But generally in real life settings of all kinds, there's going to be some kind of multiplication that we could use. Like even Dan's problem this morning with the coins, we very quickly could multiply those quarters in arrays and pennies in arrays to get a total, where we didn't have that at the beginning when he first showed us just pouring it out. So we could use money, we could use shopping, we could use any kind of real life thing. But you're right, if we have a better knowledge of where our students are at or where they come from, that helps to be even more specific, more examples. Yeah.
Any other general questions?
Just thinking about those decontextualized versus contextualized, and what kind of math skills are we developing by delivering those? All right, I don't want to jump over anyone, but it seems kind of quiet in the chat box. So you get a 15-minute break. So we're gonna start that break and then resume here after 15 minutes, which would be what time here?
1:53.
1:53 sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Go ahead and start the recording when it ends.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I want to welcome you back. I hope you had a good break, got to stretch, walk around, go to the bathroom, do whatever it is that you had to do, grab a snack. And I hope you guys are back and ready to do a little bit more work. We wanted to start off by revisiting our objectives, okay? You have already now had the opportunity to experience depth and rigor within AD standards. We looked at 2 different standards specifically. We got to examine decontextualized, and contextualized learning. We also got an opportunity to demonstrate some math practices while solving the cookie problem. And hopefully you were able to also experience some of the shifts and what it is like. What we are going to do next, after you guys have gotten to experience some of these things, is now we want to shift from you being like the student and experiencing these things to putting on your teacher hat and looking at how can I provide opportunities like this for my own students. And so we are going to, hopefully in the second section, give you guidelines and resources to help you plan a rich task that allows students to experience the depth and rigor within the AB standards. And again, we're hoping to support you through this and provide you lots of time to collaborate.
So we're going to start here. I'm just going to give you an example of what your Jamboard will look like using what we've just accomplished this morning. So if we put on our teacher hats and we're going to say that the standard we just completed here was 30A3, using multiplication and division within 100 to solve word problems in situations involving equal groups, arrays, measurements, quantities. And an example of that by using drawings and equations with a symbol for the unknown number to present the problem. What I have here is a chart, and then we've also included the math practices there on the bottom left. And using the tasks that we just completed, we put in our information within this chart. So the objective, the students will be able to, is what we want to start with. And it's going to be that standard. The students will be able to multiply and divide within 100. That's kind of where we want you to fill out the first part there, just your objective of what you expect the students to accomplish. And it should be tied into the standard you're trying to accomplish. Then we gave you a row here for the task. As you can see, our task is listed there, a cookie problem, and it's from Open Middle Resource. And we put the link in there as a reference for us if we wanted to grab this again for our lesson planning. And then we included contextualized and decontextualized, just kind of as you're planning, thinking about what kind of task you're offering your students. For ours, we said the cookie problem was contextualized and the math problems, the 10 in a minute, was your decontextualized problems. Ask yourself, is this task considered a low floor or high ceiling activity? If and we said yes, because all the students are able to be engaged in the task. Like everybody can come in and start talking about making cookies while they could work to their own ability levels. We talked about like challenging them. Can you have a 1 times 8, 84? Does that make sense? Is it logical to have one row of 84 cookies? Yes, no. And also kind of bringing in that, what if we had 3 numbers? Like, what if we had to think about the number of pans we were using also to bake cookies? So being able to kind of bring that up to higher levels. Does your task allow for everybody to enter and go to wherever their math skill might be? Also considering the math practices on the side. Now, we just kept talking about those 4, number 1, number 2, number 4, number 7. You might feel that your task addresses other kind of math practices that you'll see the students do as they engage in your task. You certainly can choose any of those 8. We were just working with the 4 today, so you can see those circled on our chart.
Another thing to add is that like you could have extended or changed the task slightly, where we had hoped to provide an opportunity for groups to share out. And we didn't provide that then in the follow-up. However, that could have been something that would have allowed the, number 3, where groups are constructing viable arguments where they are able to kind of create opportunities for being able to support their thinking as to why they thought like 1 and 84 were not correct or not the best answer for that problem. And they could then, have other groups argue back, well, it is an answer, it is a solution, right? So then they're being able to critique each other. And so there are, other math practices that we could have brought in, but specifically in what we planned, these were the 4 that we felt like we hit very strong.
So we want you to be able to utilize this kind of guideline to kind of help you in the next activity.
All right, the second page that you're going to see in the Jamboard for your collaborative task is the one that you see on the screen. Our goal for this next part of our session is for you to be able to create or find a rich task that supports this standard. We have identified a different standard for you to work with in your groups. And I want to reiterate the fact that Dan had mentioned earlier, he left teaching because he felt called to work in curriculum and to build tasks and curriculum that were rich in these opportunities. And, as a teacher, let's be honest, we don't always have the time to come up, nor do I have the creativity always to make these connections. And so when I see other teachers, that's their strength, great, please do that and then share those resources. So you don't have to, if you don't feel like you have to create anything today, but we do want you to be able to identify a task and then potentially leverage the work that somebody else has done and how to think about how would you bring that into your own classroom? What changes would you make to support what your classroom looks like? The standard that we want you to focus on is 1OA4. I think I'm reading that right. And we want you to understand subtraction as an unknown addend problem. For example, subtract 10 minus 8 by finding the number that makes 10 when added to 8. So in this next part, you will be able to collaborate with your peers in a Jamboard. And we have some guidelines and resources on the side here that will also support your work. As I mentioned before, we're not asking you necessarily to have to create the wheel all over again, but we want you to create a lesson where you can use a rich task. And so we have various resources listed here, and they will be shared out. Mark has already done it. And the one that we pulled from was Open Middle, and it's one that we would recommend starting from. You will have plenty of time, so you could have somebody on your group. If you guys want to all explore a different task and then, come back and talk about which one you want to use, that's fine. But also please be mindful of your time. We do want you not to just spend the whole time looking at these different resources, okay? So again, Open Middle would be a great place to start. The second thing we want you to kind of think about as you're doing this is your task contextualized or decontextualized. Be prepared to explain your reasoning and why you chose that. Third, we want you to consider, is it low floor, high ceiling? And again, being prepared to explain your reasoning for that. Think about what, are all my students able to engage in this task, no matter what level they're at, what holes they have? And then think about, do I have students in my class who I think would be able to be challenged even in this problem? Finally, being able to look at how does your task support the standard? Okay, so we looked at the fact that the cookie task gave students opportunities to examine multiplication at a deeper level, be able to use factors or multiples to be able to solve their problem depending on what method you chose. So please consider then also how your task that you choose supports students' understanding and mastery of a standard. Okay. The third page is an empty chart, similar to the one that Marcie showed you with the example, okay? You have your standard here that you guys are going to be working on. You have all the math practices here if you'd like to reference them. And then we gave you open space to be able to fill it out within your group. We have also provided a fourth page in the Jamboard, in your Jamboard this time around, that is just an empty workspace. So that if you're wanting just an empty page to work through a problem or to share ideas, you do have that space as well. So each group will have 4 pages in their Jamboard: the example, the directions, the chart for you to fill in, and then a work page. Just like the cookie task, we will have you guys in Jamboards collaborating, and it looks like we will have, help me with the math there, Marcie. How many groups are we going to have?
I think we can do the same as we did the other one. So groups of 3.
Oh, groups of 3. Okay.
Groups of 3 people. So again, if you are in group, if your breakout room is breakout room 6, please make sure you're grabbing the collaborative task planning jam 2, because that's for breakout rooms 6 to 10. I also want to note that when you come in, you're looking for the orange sticky with your group number on it. So everybody will come in on page 1, but that isn't necessarily your group number. Please scroll through until you find the page that has your breakout room number on it or your group number. Those are the same. And then you will have the 4 pages consecutively belonging to your group to work on. Any questions about that before you get put into your breakout rooms? You are working on a different standard this time. It's still in AB standards. It's a level 1 subtraction. So make sure that you read the standard, you know what you're addressing, and then find a task that you think can support that standard.
And as always, if you have any problems, please reach out for help. As Gail mentioned before, there is, I believe, a button that you can push, and it will allow us to, it kind of flags us to let us know that you guys need support in your room.
I think we're set.
Okay. 43 minutes plus a 2-minute countdown. Is that what we're still planning on?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay.
Allow everybody. All right, welcome back, everybody. Marcie, do you want to lead or do you want me to?
Sure. So we're going to just do a little reflection here before we leave, thinking about the activity you just accomplished. How was today's activity supported? How did today's activity support your ability to create rich tasks that allow students to experience depth and rigor? What other resources or support would you need? And any other questions or comments that you might have? We'd like you to put those in the chat box for us, so we can help answer any of that before you're done for the day. I'm looking at your Jamboards. I saw that many of you utilized your free page. You've got your tasks, your objectives, and you were using the terms contextualize, decontextualize, and high floor, high ceiling. So those vocabulary words are there. We were really hoping today that you would be able to experience that depth and rigor, and then also be able to utilize those skills to plan the tasks. So I will, yeah, you all were really good at the Jamboard. We were kind of concerned that there might be a few people still struggling with that, but it looks like many of you were fluent. Really helpful. You can unmute also if you'd like to. We thought we were just trying to be safe. If we had a huge number of people, it would be kind of crazy, but since there's only 21 of us in here, if you have something you want to comment, that's okay too. Or question?
Hi, I'm just kind of curious how everyone else feels about the time it takes for planning, fun and interactive lessons. What others think about that?
Especially when we're given like 10 minutes to prep.
Yes, for many different classes.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in. So one of the things that we were tasked to do this past year was to create a Google sheet, or you could do it with an Excel document, of our math units that we're responsible for teaching. And I teach the TABE E3 math curriculum, which it's like 15 units. So, and I've taught it now for several years. Putting everything into a document and now adding to it and tweaking it, like maybe a quiz or a Jamboard, the Jamboard activities that I do, or now if I want to like even expand and do like a Nearpod activity or a Pear Deck activity, like once I have all my core stuff there in that document, it's made it so much easier to add to it, to modify, and I can create stuff a lot quicker. I can pull stuff that I've already got and make some modifications to it so that it's like a new activity. But that has all taken a lot of time to get there, but it's worth the time to do that, because when you get on the other side of that, you're like, oh my gosh, now I can pull out activities and make them creative much more quickly. But until you get to that point, it is hard. And you feel like you're recreating the wheel, like every single lesson. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, I've got to start all over. And the other thing I've started doing with lessons, and that I did in this Google slide document, or not Google slide, this Google Sheets document that I have, is I've put my lessons in a Google slideshow and then tried to put all the links for every single lesson within that Google slide. And it's all right there to use and to play around with and modify.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
It's a lot.
It's overwhelming at first.
I am not a math teacher.
That's a good point to also say that there is a Padlet that Lindsay has created with all the links from today. So if you want to grab some of those links to add to your Google Sheet, those will be available also. I think they'll be dropping that link somehow, right, Gail? Or sending it in an email or something.
Yeah, I'm going to send, I'll do both. I'll drop it right now and then everyone will receive an email as well.
And like Laura said, it is overwhelming at first. You can only do what you can do. You find a good one and you adapt it. And then you find another one another time and you adapt it. And then after you've done it a few times, they're not new. And then you add another one.
Yeah, each year just add what you can and collaborate. Colleagues find something really good and they create something, share.
And something that I've tried to get better at is immediately when my class is over, whatever I've created, to put it into that document rather than be like, oh, I'll put it in later. Because then you forget to, and then maybe you close it out and then you've got to search for it. But if you do it the minute your class is over, then it's automatically stored and recorded.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, we're at 3 o'clock, so we're gonna close up shop here. Your jams look great, all your activities. We hope that you were able to create a rich task that had that low floor, high ceiling and collaboration in there that you could take and run now to your classrooms. And that's what we have for you. So if you have any other questions, we're here, but otherwise I'm gonna say goodbye. Thanks for joining Math Institute today and have a good weekend.